don't need to be nervous. It's a fight. It's a 7-point ball game, and we get the ball first. It's a fight. Go out there and fight.
Gives it to Love, running left, tripped up, stays on his feet through one tackle, muscling and struggling.
Whoa, he scored!
He's in!
Oh my gosh!
Touchdown, Notre Dame! Jeremiah Love would not be denied! Aller throws, loose ball, intercepted! Christian Gray picks it off, Notre Dame will get the ball back.
Irish Nation, Notre Dame improves to 6-2 on the season, beating a rival, the only other Catholic FBS institution, the Boston College Eagles, 25-10. Win your clunkers. Not Notre Dame's best game of the year, but we get the job done. Come away with a W. Mike and I are recording this, very importantly, on Monday, November 3rd. Mike, the first college playoff rankings come out from the committee tomorrow night. I'm going to put you on the spot. We haven't prepped this at all. You get like a one-word answer. Where is Notre Dame in the first rankings tomorrow night?
11.
11.
That's
Dang, I was going to say 11.
Yeah.
I was going to say 11. Let's both go 11. Okay.
I've seen a lot of projections putting us as high as 10, but I have this sneaking suspicion that the playoff committee might, they might take a little bit of a harsher approach to us than maybe some of these projections and some of these media personalities. So, I think considering all that kind of led me to drop us by like a spot where a lot of other people have us. I still think I still feel like we're sitting in a good spot for the playoff, especially when you consider, our remaining schedule and the fact that a lot of these teams are going to continue to beat up on each other. But yeah, I think 11 right now sounds about right. Look, I think what's helping us is like we're looking pretty good in a lot of advanced stats. Certain strength of record statistics, we're actually faring pretty well in that, even though we don't have any great wins. So look, I think it's just generally when you stack up our story, our advanced metrics, everything like that, Notre Dame is. I think we're clearly establishing ourselves as a playoff team.
Yeah, I've got us at 11. I think there's a couple of teams, not a lot, but a couple of teams that just have better resumes. Oklahoma, as an example, is one spot behind us in the AP polls. Quality wins over Tennessee, Michigan, and then I think two pretty quality losses against Texas and Ole Miss that frankly right now look really comparable to our two losses. So like I struggle having Notre Dame above Oklahoma. Same thing, I kind of struggle having us above Texas with a really big quality win against Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. And I think two okay losses, one really good loss to Ohio State, only losing by 7 to the best team in the country, and then a close loss to Florida. So like, it just feels like, if anything, I think we're in that kind of 11 to 13 zip code, but a lot of the spots I'm seeing is actually 8 to 11. I just think that gets hard justifying us above, the Big 12 schools. So we're in the hunt. I continue to maintain Las Vegas and the Athletic. They all agree if Notre Dame wins out, we are in. ESPN's model continues to say if we win out, it's iffy. But I just think, to your point, this next week alone, BYU, Texas Tech playing each other. You've got Texas and Texas A&M still have to go. Like, there's just so many big matchups of teams at or around, those at-large bids. It just feels like Notre Dame will eventually move up. We've got a couple of more important pressing topics here tonight. We've got the Boston College recap and look ahead to the Navy game. Mike, as always, glass half full. We've got to start with the strongest side of the ball. And in this game, that has got to be Chris Ash's defense. A pretty darn lockdown performance from the defense, holding Boston College to 10 points. What stood out most?
Look, yeah, another great performance by the defense. We've come a really long way from the beginning of the season. I mean, this isn't even it's not even a question anymore that we have a good defense, which is a great spot to be in. And we're not even fully healthy. Christian Gray was out this game. Gabriel Rubio, are probably our best interior defensive lineman. He was also hurt. So we get these guys back. There's another gear for this defense moving more into the year. But I think you have to start with the havoc. This was just a phenomenal game in terms of havoc rate. I'm looking at the stat right now. 29% havoc rate. And it was generated. There's a lot of havoc generated by both the front seven and the defensive backs. I think you look at the amount of sacks and tackles for loss. We had 6 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 7 pass deflections, 3 interceptions, just creating chaos for the BC offense the entire game. And it made it really, really hard for them to put any meaningful drive together. Their success rate was really low. It was 37%. So you got a havoc rate. You're giving up a havoc rate that high, and you're generating a success rate of only 37%. The only way you could make that up is with some spectacular explosiveness. And look, they had, I would say, pretty run of the mill explosiveness. So they weren't able to really make up for any of that in the explosiveness department either. So that's how you get only 10 points in a game. And look, I think that those 10 points, I think they were lucky to even get that. I mean, they pretty much they had that one drive that was aided by their quarterback. Somehow, I was texting you, Brett, about this. Somehow he avoided getting sacked on a third down. He kind of like pinballed around, and then he was able to hit a receiver downfield. But really, like, the cherry on top of their touchdown drive was Leonard Moore just tripped, and that's probably the first time he's ever tripped. It's the first time I'm aware of, and that's how they got the touchdown. So look, they certainly were like, they were moving the ball downfield at times on that drive, but I mean, really, like, that was a touchdown that we definitely could have stopped. So just a total shutdown performance by the defense. You look at all the advanced stats, and it just screams that it was a clinic performance by Chris Ash's unit.
Yeah, and there's so many times where the product on the field doesn't line up with the advanced stats. This game might be the epitome of that. A 21-play scoring drive took 11 minutes and 20 seconds off the third quarter. Maybe the most aggravating drive I've ever watched. But a fascinating stat, of those 21 plays, 13 of them went for 2 yards or less. Like, it is insane to come up with a scenario where a team can put together, first off, a 21-play drive without scoring a touchdown is statistically improbable. A long scoring drive where you have 13 plays go for 2 yards or less, and you just keep barely eking out first downs. It was just like, even when Boston College had some success, they had to work so incredibly hard to sustain it. I think you're spot on with the havoc rate. I thought that was the stat of the game. Their success rate was just 37%. Never really got going. No real explosiveness in this game either. I'm just looking it up now. I think Boston College's longest play, their longest run was 6 yards. Their longest pass, 25 yards. I mean, like, having a long run of 6 yards, what a tough day at the office. They were held to 1.7 yards per carry, even excluding the sacks. They just got nothing going in the run game, completely owned the line of scrimmage. It was clear they were mismatched. That showed up. And then I got to, talk about discipline in two facets here. On the one hand, we gave up 4 first downs in this game on defensive penalties on third down. Like, you got a chance to get off the field, you make a stop, and you commit a penalty. 3 of those unsportsmanlike conducts, generally in the late hit variety. So on the one hand, stuff we got to clean up, stuff that should be easy to clean up, but it's really frustrating to see. It's really frustrating if you're Marcus Freeman. On the other hand, just 5 missed tackles in this game. A missed tackle rate of about 7%. So one of our best tackling performances. No player had more than 1 missed tackle. Like, it was just a great team effort on defense. And the advanced stats say it all. There's a reason we held them to 10 points. And frankly, I think they're pretty darn lucky to get those 10 points. A lot of great players here in this game that I think can deserve call outs. Mike, walk through a couple. I'll walk through a couple. Who do you think really stood out in this game?
Yeah, it's funny. A couple of the guys I'm going to call out are guys who also had a couple of these penalties that showed a lack of discipline. So I'll call out Jalen Sneed. So he is our highest graded player on Pro Football Focus. 1 sack. He 2 pressures, graded out exceptionally well in coverage. just all over the field. Like I said, he had that one, that one late hit that showed a lack of discipline, but otherwise, I mean, he was just all over the field, which is exactly what you want to see. And someone who's always had a lot of potential. And granted, look, BC is not the best offense in the world, but Jalen Sneed's, he's one of those players who has always had a high upside. He's very athletic. And it's just good to see him flying around the ball. Kingston Villamuasa, he's another player that also had another one of those bad penalties. But aside from that, look, I mean, the guy just
What a day.
Yeah, just constantly harassing the quarterback, 4 pressures, 2 sacks. I guess depending on the source you're looking at, ESPN has him as 1.5 sacks. Pro Football Focus has him as 2. But then he also has 2.5 tackles for loss. So just extremely disruptive. Just making life very, very difficult for the BC offense. Luke Talich, look, I think he also had some very impressive plays. There was that one. Maybe it was a 4th down. I want to say it was a 4th down play. BC tried throwing a short pass to the tight end, and just an extremely athletic and impressive play by Luke Talich in coverage to bat the pass away, and caused BC to turn the ball over there. He also had an interception as well. I think he had. Let's see, I'm looking at the stats right. No, he did not have interception. He did not. But generally, very effective in coverage. The other player in the secondary, I'm going to call out Zachary, freshman Mark Zachary. Great game, like for him. He graded out very well, and this is someone who's, I think we've been seeing improvement from him week after week. Someone who, especially earlier in the year, when we talked about inexperience in the secondary, leading to some lapses in coverage, some big plays. Well, it seems like he's settling into the defense. It seems like he's playing much better in coverage. I mean, he was targeted 4 times, 1 reception, only gave up 4 yards. So look, I think this is exactly what you want to see from the defense. This is exactly what you want to see from your young players. Over the course of the years, that they develop, they get better as they get more comfortable playing at this level of competition, at this level of speed at the collegiate level. That they continue to improve, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And look, these are just a few names I'm calling out. I mean, there are many. I feel like this is one of those games where it's just like, there's so many people you could call out. We'd probably be talking for a half hour if we call that everyone. I guess maybe one guy I don't want to leave out, actually, now that I'm looking at the list, is Drake Bowen, because his stats just kind of fly off the page here. He had 14 tackles, solo tackles. He had a sack, 2 tackles for loss, pass deflection. So just a very, very impressive performance.
Can I add one more? So I was going to say Mark Zachary, 4 targets, 1 catch for 4 years. Tay Johnson had 2 interceptions, and he doesn't make our top 6. By the way, I agree. I didn't have him in my top 6 either, but he's now the 7th defender we've listed here, and he had 2 interceptions in the game. I mean, that just goes to show just how disruptive this defense was. So many guys making an impact.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. And I mean, this is exactly what we needed this game. So I feel like every team is going to have a clunker performance, right? Every team is going to have a game where just everything seems to go wrong. I mean, if you look high level at this game, we were actually dominating on a play-by-play basis. Like from a yardage standpoint, like the gap between us and BC was pretty vast. We had 458 yards. They had 281. We had many opportunities to score and put points on the board, but we squandered a lot of them. When you have these types of games, when you have a strong defense that you can rely on, those are that is like so critical to get through these games, because like a strong defense tends to hold up well in these scenarios. So when you have a game where you miss a bunch of extra points, you fumble on the goal line, you have all these weird penalties, you have a phantom face mask call, when you have all these things that are happening, when you have a defense that you can kind of lean back on, that can kind of that keeps things from ever getting even closer than they should. It keeps things, keeps the team from from potentially even hitting a panic button, because that defense is gonna keep the opposing offense from taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah, flipping to offense, I think it's worth starting out by just acknowledging the points on the board was frustrating. missed field goal, 2 missed extra points, the fumble in the red zone. It felt like we just spotted them 12 points. Okay. After that, though, you step back. Explosiveness in this game was off the charts. We had 4 different players have a play of 30 or more yards. Sorry, just in the receiving game. 5 total players, counting Jeremiah Love with his 94-yard touchdown. 5 different players had a chunk play of 30 or more yards. 4 of those were for 40 or more yards. So first off, explosiveness, off the charts. Second of all, 458 yards of offense, leading to 25 points. That is like, it's statistically, like, I don't even know how to tell you how unlikely that is. Like, if you put up 458 yards of offense, you're just going to be scoring 30 plus points like every single time. And it's not like we had a bunch of turnovers, right? Like, Jadarian Price lost his fumble, but other than that, like, it was a pretty clean game other than just not getting points on the board, namely by way of not being able to kick a football. And so when you look at this game, you have to start to nitpick on why things maybe weren't great beyond the kicking game. I point to a couple. The success rate was okay, 43%. There were times in this game where in the second and third period, that success rate was like over 70%, but in the first quarter, it was 24%. And this has been a recurring theme. It felt like we came into this game saying, we are just going to run the ball with Jeremiah Love no matter what they do. And that just, it frankly just wasn't the right path forward. Now, I say that we started this game off with, 4 passes and a punt. The next drive, generated pretty good yardage and wound up going for it on 4th and 3 and didn't get it. But like on that drive, you had a 1-yard run, a 2-yard run. You just had a lot of kind of trying to run into, 7-person, 8-person boxes. And it felt like once we just said, fine, if you want to put that many guys in the box, CJ Carr is going to beat you throwing it. And I just think Mike Denbrock's got to get there a little quicker. I don't hate the play calling. Like, again, they came out against loaded boxes and we did try throwing it and didn't execute very well. Next drive, we moved the ball. It's like we were consistently moving the ball and just not getting points on the board. But I think when we stall out, there's just some stubbornness in trying to run against loaded boxes. Not a ton, but a little bit of stubbornness trying to run against those loaded boxes versus just more quickly saying, hey, there's 7-8 guys in the box. If you're going to do that, fine. Like, we're going to just throw the ball and beat you that way and commit to it. And I think it took us a little while to get there. Once we did, offense hummed and was moving the ball up and down the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, BC's strategy clearly coming into this game was, hey, we're not going to let you run the ball. They, as you mentioned, they loaded the box. Even in the even with their defensive backs, they had them creep a lot closer to the line of scrimmage than they normally would. And look, yeah, I mean, it was tough for the run game outside of the Jeremiah Love 94-yard touchdown run. Like, if you remove that, and I get you can't just remove it from the stats, obviously, but if you look at like the other runs we have, by and large, they tended to be 2 and 3 yard runs most of the game. So yeah, I mean, Brett, to your point, look, I think maybe we didn't get to the the point where we were just like unleashing CJ Carr. We could have gotten there a little bit faster, maybe, right? And to your point, like there were some of the early plays in the game. We had some passing plays that didn't work as well as we wanted. But once Denbrock did get there, I mean, look, the passing game was extremely lethal. It was very explosive. We saw the CJ Carr again that we hadn't seen the last couple games as much. This looked like more like the CJ Carr that we had seen, the first handful of weeks of the season, where we looked like we had like the next great Notre Dame quarterback, and he looked exactly like that person again. He was the highest graded player per Pro Football Focus on offense. 299 yards, adjusted completion percentage of 79%, average depth of target. This was an area that had been creeping a little bit lower the last couple games. It was back up to 13.3. So he had an adjusted completion percentage of nearly 80%, and his average depth of target was really high. So he was making deep, difficult throws, and he was doing it very accurately. One other thing related to this I'm going to call out is, I mean, he was operating from a very clean pocket the entire game. The pressure rate only 7%, and BC blitzed 37% of the time. So, a Jason point here. Great job by the offensive line keeping the pocket clean. I think this was, you have to qualify. BC's certainly not a great defense. They're actually one of the worst defenses in college football. But still, I think this was a great performance by the offensive line in pass protection. Something that we want to see, especially with the injuries that we've had on the offensive line. So great to see the passing game, take off, and we adapted what BC was doing, and we saw a lot of explosiveness.
Yeah, and another thing to call out that I thought stood out to me, and when I went back and looked at the data, I thought it was less so, is short yardage situation for Notre Dame in this game. Felt like at times problematic. I went back and looked on 3rd and 4th down of 3 yards or less. We were 5 for 9 converting. And that might feel like a low number, but interestingly, at least according to AI overview here that I'm looking up here real time, it's about 60% success rate on 3rd down and 2 or less. Now I looked at 3 yards or less, which in theory should even be lower. So, I think everyone wants to just say, hey, 1 and 2 yard plays should be automatic. That's just not true. Like, short yardage situations are around a 60-65% success rate. And in this game, Notre Dame was kind of right on that number at 5 for 9. I'd like to see it a little higher. Like, that's not great. Like, I'd like it to be better than that. It certainly stinks when it was like 4th and 2 and we had a 4-yard loss to Jeremiah Love that just never had a chance. One thing I liked in this game, it felt a little less gimmicky. It felt like we just went out there and ran our offense. We were in shotgun. We threw it sometimes. We passed it sometimes. And you'd like it to see more successful. And I think you remember the ones that didn't work out as well. But when you got situations where it's 3rd and 2 and you go 0-yard run up the middle to Jadarian Price and then minus 4-yard run to Jeremiah Love, that was the last 2. So we were 5 for 7 until on back-to-back plays trying to run out the clock with 7.5 minutes left in the 4th quarter. Both of our running backs get a shot at 3rd and short, 4th and short situation, and we come up empty. Like, okay, that's frustrating. But I thought in general, short yardage was better really until the game was kind of decided and we were up 25-10. Mike, what individual players should we call out in this one on the offensive side of the football?
Yeah, look, so I already called out CJ Carr. He was our highest graded player per Pro Football Focus grade. Like I said, he had nearly 300 yards, just a very, very impressive performance, and just great to see him get back on track. And I think this should be the CJ Carr that we see the rest of the year. And then look, I think you got to call out Jeremiah Love. It's like, it's the obvious names, right? Jeremiah Love, another, some very big moments, obviously the 94-yard touchdown. But he was also involved in the receiving game. He had 4 receptions for 30 yards. I also should mention that he had 2 touchdowns this game. So look, anytime you have over 160 all-purpose yards in a game, look, that's a strong performance. Even his pass blocking, like I saw clips of Jeremiah Love in pass protection. And yeah, I mean, he was just laying into people. Like he's like I said, this is something that we've talked about with him that was a big developmental area for him that he's really embraced and gotten a lot better at. And we saw it this game too. He was showing the side of a nasty blocker in some of these pass protections. There was one where he knocked the guy over and then he's just holding him down. It was like the type of stuff you'd see Quentin Nelson doing, which you just love to see that attitude from, especially from like the skill position players and the blocking. It just carries over to the rest of the team.
Do you see the story of him looking at the sideline on his 94-yard run?
Yes, that was phenomenal.
So if I don't have the clip pulled up, go back, if you're listening to the show, go back and find the clip of Jeremiah Love on the 94-yard run. And he's looking at the sideline as he's sprinting. And it turns out, so he's now the only Notre Dame player with 2 90-plus yard touchdown runs in their career. Obviously last year against Indiana, and now in this game against Boston College, first time ever in Notre Dame history. And an assistant coach had basically called him out and was like, I don't think you can. And as he was running down the sideline, he was looking to find that assistant coach and was shouting, I told you so. I told you so. As he's just running full speed, doesn't break stride, just is off having a chat with the assistant coaches. What a moment, followed by a very, subtle but determined Heisman pose to end that celebration. Man, that's a highlight reel for Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's, he's just different, right? He knows. It's like he also, I don't think he's even going full speed when he's finishing off that run, right? I think he knows exactly how fast he has to run, and he knows they're not going to catch him. So just, it's fun having the best running back in college football, arguably the best offensive player in all of college football. Yeah, it's something that we haven't experienced in a long time. Look, aside from that, I mentioned the offensive line. I already called out like how well they performed in pass protection. The run blocking, I would say, like if you look at like how much push they generated, not I would say those stats were not great. Their run blocking grades were fine, but I think you also have to qualify it that BC was totally selling out against the run, so it's a little hard to gauge. But then look, as I mentioned with CJ Carr. As CJ Carr goes, so does the passing game. So not surprising to see a lot of players in the receiving game put up some good numbers. Faison, 82 yards. I like Eli Raritan graded out really well. He had 59 yards this game. Great to see the tight end continue to play well. So look, I think it's interesting because we have a lot of exceptional performances on offense. And Brett, to your point earlier, we had 458 yards. But we only put up 25 points. So it's like you have all these players who have all these like these big plays. There's so many standout performances, and it just keeps striking me. It's like even with all that, we still only got 25 points. Just tells you how unlikely it is that we only scored 25 points. How many points we left on the board. But we certainly, I think my takeaway here is that even though we only won by 15, which is kind of sounds like a spoiled fan thing to say, right? Even though we only won by 15, the spread was 30. We showed, I think we certainly showed how much like horsepower and firepower we have. When things were rolling, it was like, oh man, okay, this team looks like pretty, very, very hard to stop. And the only thing that's holding them back is just inexplicable, weird plays, self-inflicted wounds, and things like that. And these are the types of things that these statistical models that the data says generally there's not necessarily a correlation with it. These are the types of things that they should average out over time. So you need to keep that in mind when you're looking ahead. So assuming we don't have as many weird moments like we did in this game, assuming this was our clunker and we loaded up a lot of the weird moments into this, and it's just kind of average from here on out. It's like hopefully we see more of the good that we're focusing on here, which is the standout performances. Because when all that's humming and we don't have stuff that inexplicably stops these drives or prevents us from getting points, I think this is it has the potential, as we keep saying, of a well-oiled machine.
Absolutely. One closing thought here before we get to the Navy game: the kicking situation. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think it's the most asked question I've had after any game this year is, what are my thoughts on kickers? I don't have a lot of thoughts on kickers. I have one superstitious thought. All of their jersey numbers end in 8. Can we just get like a 17 out there, or like a number 34? Like, can we just get someone whose number doesn't end in 8? I don't know. Can we do open tryouts and go find the next Brandon Aubrey on the soccer team? Go have a kicking competition and intramural football. Like, I don't have a lot of ideas. I do have one. So I say those somewhat in jest. I do have one, and I'm going to break it up part in maybe a couple thoughts coming around to. I think Noah Burnett's the guy. He's a proven college kicker in a way the other two guys aren't. The walk-on true freshman and then Eric Schmidt just aren't proven college kickers. Noah Burnett's done it. Now, all of the rumblings and rumors are basically he had a pretty bad injury at North Carolina. They forced him to kick through it, and it kind of permanently screwed up whatever's going on with his hip. And in the transfer portal era, you don't get like 3-month free agency in the NFL. You get like 24, 48 hours. Hard to get a physical in. Of course, a kid who's trying to get an NIL package isn't going to, lean into telling you if he's got a bad injury or not. Like, he's going to try to tell you he's fine and healthy. And we're figuring that out now. Feels like, by the way, not all that dissimilar to the storylines about Mitch Jeter, although I think that one was more just truly like a hamstring injury incurred during last season. But where I go with that is he's the proven guy. And despite, these recent struggles, he missed a field goal against USC. He made a recent field goal that frankly just looked like a duck. I think that was in the NC State game.
It's like 48 yards or something like that.
Yeah, and it just looked like a total duck. But even since he's been back from injury here, he's 2 for 3 with a long of 48. And we pulled him after the missed extra point against Boston College. That feels like a quick hook for a college kicker to, miss a field goal against USC, miss an extra point, and then get the hook, especially at a position that's a mind game, especially at a position where like being mentally locked in is so incredibly important that I'm not sitting there in practice, but we have a kicker in Noah Burnett who's 5 for 6 on field goals and is 20 for 22 on extra points. It just kind of feels like Noah Burnett's numbers are good. I'm not saying great. It's not great. He's now missed 2 extra points here in the last 2 weeks. It's not great that he's, 0 for 1 in the last 2 weeks, but he is our most proven kicker. And I just think you got to ride him out. And that might be a little shaky. I think benching the guy, though, isn't going to improve his confidence. And it's very clear the guys behind him aren't any better. So I'm not a special teams coach. I don't know what's going on in practice. I don't know if he's healthy or not. But I just think like Noah Burnett's the guy, and Freeman's got to go and back him and make him feel like the most confident kid in the world and roll the dice.
Yeah, I mean, look, our die has been cast with him, right? This is the situation. Freeman even made comments today that, there's nothing we can do with the roster. Like we're locked in. It's not like they can have open tryouts for a kicker. Brandon Aubrey is not. He's not coming in to save the day. We don't have some person on campus that no one knows about with a golden leg who can just. And hey, look, even if they did, like we wouldn't even be able to get them on the roster. So. This is the situation we're in, and I think you got to hope that Burnett, I think mentally, because obviously it's mental and physical, clearly. Because look, I think even if you're dinged up, missing these extra points is, those are chip shots, right? So I think you got to hope that he continues to heal, and then on top of that, mentally he becomes, he starts feeling like his old self again. And Freeman even mentioned they're gonna have these kickers. Work with sports psychologists, and look, who knows how quickly that could bear fruit, but it's something worth mentioning. So yeah, something to monitor. I mean, like last year, as you called out Brett, yeah, Mitch Jeter, he was injured for a lot of the year, and so we didn't have an effective kicking game, but he got healthy when it mattered, and he kicked not even arguably, he kicked the biggest field goal in like 30 years for Notre Dame football, and clearly a talented kicker. I think there's no question that he's a good kicker. It's just when you're dinged up, it makes a position that is already very difficult and relies heavily on the mental aspect. It makes even that mental aspect trickier because you're not 100%. It just makes these situations which are already very stressful even that much more stressful. So I think you just stick with them and look. Hopefully over the course of the next month or so, it gets better, and knock on wood, we went out and we make the playoff. Hopefully we're in a good position then with our kicking game.
Absolutely. Let's move over to the Navy game. Probably one of the shorter previews here we'll have for you. The Navy formula just remains so unchanged for a team that is 7-1, but coming to Notre Dame Stadium here as 26.5-point favorites. Mike, the Navy formula, ball control, grind out success on the ground. They are number 5 in the country in success rate, number 1 in run success rate. When they run the ball, they have a 56% success rate. They generate a surprising amount of explosiveness. I think a lot of people miss out on that, but a lot of gimmicky stuff leads to big explosiveness. They're number 4 in the country in passing explosiveness. And then they just don't make mistakes. That triple option makes it hard to get sacks, hard to get pass deflections, hard to get interceptions. So they are number 1 in the country at allowing just an 8.5% havoc rate by opposing defenses. That is their formula on offense, all told. That is a top 25 offense, number 22 in the country. But Mike, I thought my favorite stat is this is not Ken Niumatalolo's Navy. Blake Horvath at quarterback is on track for the most passing yards per game by a Navy squad since 1994. That was George Chomp as their coach on a 3-8 Navy team prior to Ken Niumatalolo, prior to Paul Johnson, prior to Charlie Weatherby. Got to go all the way back to 1994 when they threw the ball this much. How do you feel about Navy's offense coming in?
This is, look, as far as the various iterations of the Navy offense we've seen over the years, this is definitely one of the more dangerous ones. I mean, you mentioned from an SP Plus standpoint, they're top 25. They have all the familiar ingredients that you called out in terms of extremely effective running the ball. Don't make mistakes. They don't allow havoc. But the one weakness of this system in the past was always that they just wouldn't generate any explosiveness, really. And it's not like they're generating a ton of explosiveness, but for the type of offense that they have, if you have a success rate this high, if you even just generate an average amount of explosiveness, look, that the offense as a whole becomes very dangerous, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And it's driven by Blake Horvath. As you mentioned, Brett, this is the most passing yards they've had, since 1994. So this is a Navy team that can pass the ball. Anytime you have a Navy quarterback who can pass the ball, they immediately become much more dangerous. And this is about as good a passing game as they've had. So look, this passing game is effective enough to where they're not even always operating out of the triple option. There are times where they will actually come out in more of a traditional spread offense. So not that they're going to do that most of the time, but that is something that we'll likely see this game. So look, at Notre Dame, the Notre Dame defense certainly has to, they're going to have to play very disciplined. We certainly cannot have these late hit penalties. Like anytime you play Navy, anytime you have an opportunity to get that offense off the field, get your defense off the field, you can't have a self-inflicted wound and allow them, another opportunity to continue to drive the ball down the field. So this is a game where we're going to have to be very disciplined. We're going to have to know our assignments. The good thing is our defense has improved dramatically from the beginning of the season. If this was our defense from the first couple weeks coming into this Navy game, I would be very nervous, but we've continued to improve. SP Plus has this as a top 20 defense now. And I think that's a stat that's likely to improve even as we continue to go through the season. So I think as long as our defense shows up, plays the way that they have been in recent weeks, minus the self-inflicted wounds that we had against BC, I think we should be able to contain them. But it's still, look, this is still a good Navy offense. Like they're gonna be able to put up some points for sure. The advanced stats, the advanced statistics, that is what that's what those numbers are saying.
I do think it is helpful to continue to have continuity in Marcus Freeman. I know we've got a new defensive coordinator, but playing Navy every year, I think also helps in the prep. On the other side of the ball, Navy's defense is sneaky really bad, but they're sneaky always bad. This is a program here that's won a lot over the last 16, 17 years, but it's really by way of that offense. And they just don't have the talent on defense. And unlike on offense, where they also don't have the talent, there's no triple option on defense that just does something gimmicky that's hard to prepare for. So they are number 84 in SP Plus. They're number 126 in tackling, number 95 in success rate allowed. Like they just have teams march up and down the field on them. But interestingly, when they won a lot from 2008 to 2019, they were bowl eligible 11 of those 13 years. They had 2 11-win seasons, and their defense had an average SP plus of 88th in the country. They were never in the top 50. They were only in the top 70 twice. So truly, like, this is the Navy of all Navy teams, where they are just ball control on offense, move the chains in the run game, don't make mistakes on offense, and then the defense just hangs on for dear life, and they hope to win close. Like, that has just been Navy's winning formula now for the better part of 17 years. And that's exactly who they are again this year. 7-1 by way of just a really good offense and a really bad defense. And they hope they're just a matchup nightmare for everyone. So to me, that's where Notre Dame has to take advantage. CJ Carr, Jeremiah Love, and company just have to march up and down the field. They have a total mismatch. There's not a part of this Navy defense where you can look and say, you know what? I think they could slow down Notre Dame doing blank. Like, that just doesn't exist. And this is by far the best team that they will play all year, at least up until this point in the season. Notre Dame's just got to take advantage of that matchup and go put a bunch of points on the board. Mike, I think it's worth spending a second on the schedule. Walk us through what we know about Navy from who they've played so far this year.
So look, they only have one loss. So at a quick glance, you'd perhaps be like, oh, okay, look, this seems like a Navy team that's put together a strong resume. However, when you dive into the teams that they've actually beat, if you look at their SP plus rankings, very, very low. So there could be a little bit of smoke and mirrors here. I'm just going to call out what the rankings are of the teams they've beat: 80, 91, 107, 112, 117, 119, and then FCS, Virginia Military Institute. And 3 of these were one-score games. So yes, they only have one loss, but this was against a very, very weak schedule. Their one loss was to a good North Texas team. So look, that's the one blemish, and there's no big shame in losing to North Texas. They were a solid team this year, and I think kind of adjacent to what we're talking about here with their schedule. Their schedule is much more, whereas our schedule was more front end loaded. Theirs is very back end loaded. So obviously they have us this week, which is clearly the toughest game on their schedule. But then after that, they have South Florida, Memphis, and then Army. So they only have one loss right now. But we're looking at don't be surprised if we fast forward a month from now and people are talking about how Navy really fell off. Well, I think that's probably not a fair way to describe their season. It's really just that they had a bunch of easy games early in the season, and then they got into their difficult games at the end of the year. So we didn't really know exactly how they stacked up until they got into these more difficult games. But look,
they were favorites for 7 straight games, and they're going to be underdogs for the next 4, including North Texas really here through until they get to the Army game to close out the year.
Yeah, and this is a good Navy team. This is one of the best offenses we've seen from a Navy squad, but it's a below average in terms of how Navy's defenses usually stack up. This is a below average version of what they typically have on defense. So what this means is I would say it's a better than normal Navy team, which is roughly around like top 50-ish in SP plus. Sure, they could knock off, Memphis or, South Florida if everything falls into place the right way. But look, it's going to be difficult. As you mentioned, Brett, they're not going to be favored. There'll probably be a decent spread against them in these games. They're going to need a few things to bounce their way. So, I know going into this game, people were hopeful that Navy would have beaten North Texas, so they would come into this game undefeated and it would potentially be a ranked win. But realistically, even if that was the case, because of this schedule, which is so weighted towards the back, I don't think it really would have mattered at the end of the year, because they would have fallen off by the time you get to the final rankings.
100% agree. So let's get into the game prediction. ESPN's win predictor has Notre Dame winning this 96.5% of the time. Vegas opened up at 26.5 points. It's since come down a little bit to 24.5 points. And interestingly, SP Plus implies about a 19-point spread. And typically, we see Navy games have SP Plus actually overstate the spread in both directions because of Navy's ball control. Both teams just have fewer possessions, fewer chances to put points on the board, so it leads to closer games. And we've seen this, throughout the year with Navy games staying relatively close. And so I'm surprised that Vegas is actually outside of SP Plus by a pretty wide 5.5 point margin. Pretty much every other Notre Dame game against Navy in recent memory, the Las Vegas spread has been inside the SP Plus projection. So, Mike, with that, I'm curious, what do you have here for a score prediction?
Yeah, I mean, look, before I say my score prediction, I think it's just worth mentioning that if you look at our last few games and you look at the SP Plus spread, the spread that the SP Plus would imply versus Vegas, Vegas has been more favorable. I think like USC, for instance, they gave us, I don't know, maybe like as many as 5 more points than the SP Plus would have given us. BC, there was a few more. And then again, here, Vegas is giving us more points. And as you mentioned, usually the case is that it goes the opposite way because, the pace of the game, Navy chews up so much clock. There's just not as much opportunity to hit that SP Plus spread. So I don't know. It's interesting. This is where it'd be really interesting to see like the models that Vegas is using. Obviously, they have to account for how much money is actually being put down on each side. So that comes into play. But it seems like there could be an element here where like the recent data points from Notre Dame are particularly strong, and it's, they're maybe weighting that a little bit more heavily than SP Plus would. So a bit of a tangent. Now I'm going to get into my sport prediction. I think this is a game where I think we're gonna not have these inexplicable, mistakes where we shoot ourselves in the foot. We're not going to have these weird plays where Leonard Moore falls down and Jadarian Price fumbles on the goal line. I don't think we're going to have, a play where we're, inches from our player's knee not hitting the ground, and otherwise we get a pick six touchdown. So I think this will be a more normal game in terms of like those types of things. And so then with that, I think our offense and defense are going to play the way that they, that we expect them to play, which is, I think, a team that's continuing to trend towards a true playoff contender. And I think it's just going to be too much for Navy. Like, look, they have a good offense, but I think our defense is really starting to kick into gear. I think we're going to generate, look, you're never going to generate that much havoc against Navy just because of their offense. But I think we'll be able to generate some havoc just because we're becoming increasingly disruptive. I don't think we're going to give them much in terms of explosiveness. And so look, I think we'll be able to bottle them up for the most part on defense. They'll be able to move the ball a little bit, but I don't think we're going to give up a ton of points. And then on offense, I think we should just be able to, kind of do whatever we want, right? It's going to be like a pick your poison for them. It's like, do you want to focus on the run more, or do you want to, and then let CJ Carr just air it out deep, or do you want to try to limit the explosiveness in the passing game? But then if you do that, then look, here comes Jeremiah Love, and he's about to rip off like another 80-yard run. So look, I think there's just too much for Navy to contend with here. I think even if they have some of these long drives that chip a lot of clock, I think we're going to dominate this game. I have us winning 35-14. So not quite beating the spread, but pretty close and a comfortable win for sure.
Gosh, I'm just going to say what my guess was, and I think I'm about to change it. I had it at 34-17, thinking SP Plus, just follow that true, and it says it should be a little less than that. I'm going back here over the last decade, and this has either been a ridiculously close game. Notre Dame beat them in Baltimore a few years ago, 35-32. They beat us back in 16, 28-27. We hung on in 2013 to win 38-34. Like, it has either been 7-point close games you don't expect or see coming, or we blow the doors off of them. 51-14, 42-3, 34-6, 52-20, 44-22. So I'm getting pretty nervous here that this game has always either been way closer than expected or just an utter blowout. That to pick kind of an in-between 17-point win like I think SP Plus wants me to, I think I'm going to lean into it here, and I'm going to take a touchdown off here on each side. So I'm going to go 41-10. Notre Dame wins in a blowout, but I don't like it. My math tells me this should be a 17-point game. My math tells me this should be like 34-17, but I'm going to lean in and say it's never actually an in-between rivalry. And again, just everyone at home, this is terrible analytics. You should never look at the history to repeat itself. You should just look at the data in front of you. But I'm going to look at the history of this rivalry, and it's either a way too close game that I just don't see happening here, or a blowout. So I'm going to lean into the blowout. Notre Dame wins it 41-10. What do I know? My predictions have been terrible this year. Please don't take any of this as betting advice.
I was hoping you were just going to lean even further and say like 55-3 or something like that. Just
let's be reasonable.
Wait, let's put lucky numbers. Hey, or unlucky numbers, 88-8. Maybe we can make those 8s lucky. Although I forgot to mention when you were saying 8 has been unlucky for us. 8 is actually a very lucky number in China, actually. So
just not for Notre Dame kickers. Just not for Notre Dame kickers.
Not for exactly. So
all right, this show is not betting advice. Enjoy the game until we're back. Irish beat Midshipmen.
Irish beat Midshipmen.